Have you ever stopped to wonder why the simple stories Jesus told over 2,000 years ago still echo through hearts and minds today? The carpenter from Nazareth spoke of seeds and treasures, banquets and storms, yet beneath these ordinary images lies a treasure trove of spiritual power. Why do these parables have the power to pierce through centuries, cultures, and every layer of the human soul? Imagine holding a key that unlocks not just ancient truths, but living answers to our deepest struggles right now. Today, we'll peel back the surface of these beloved stories and uncover the mysteries that few ever truly grasp. What if the wisdom hidden in the parable of the lost sheep could change how you see yourself, your neighbors, even your greatest fears? Few realize that within each parable, Jesus hides a map leading to radical transformation, to hope shining in the darkness. Get ready to see with new eyes. Feel the suspense as eternal wisdom meets modern confusion. Don't blink, because what you'll discover may just be the answer you never knew you needed. Keep watching, and let the timeless words of Jesus reveal a path forward for your life, here, now, and forever. Step into the world of ancient Judea, a place where the air shimmers with desert heat, bustling marketplaces pulse with daily life, and the hopes of an oppressed people hang silent in the space between every word. Against this backdrop walks a figure both familiar and utterly mysterious, Jesus of Nazareth. Picture the sun's golden rays casting long shadows as crowds gather, straining to catch his voice. They press in, peasants and scholars, the devout and the desperate, all hungry for a word that could break the silence of their longing. But what they hear is stories. At first, these parables seem almost too simple. A sower scattering seed, a woman searching for a lost coin, a shepherd leaving 99 sheep for the one that wandered off. Many believe that Jesus' teaching was for the humble and uneducated alone, but the profound truth is this: layered within these everyday images are encrypted codes, spiritual mysteries designed to unravel the deepest questions of the human condition. You might be wondering, why parables? Why not just say things plainly? To answer that, we must step deeper into the fabric of Jesus' world. The Jewish tradition revered stories not just as entertainment, but as vessels of wisdom preserved through centuries. Proverbs, allegories, riddles, these were how a people under Roman occupation protected their identity, passing on faith like a secret seed sown in the cracks of empire. And Jesus takes this cultural art and ignites it. Parables become his signature. But here's where the mystery thickens. The Gospel of Matthew records Jesus' disciples, perplexed, asking, "Why do you speak to the people in parables?" Matthew 13:10. And Jesus replies with words that twist like a key in a hidden lock. "Because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them." Matthew 13:11. Imagine hearing this for the first time, the shock, the invitation, the challenge wrapped in every phrase. It's as if Jesus stands at the threshold of revelation, holding open a door between the seen and the unseen. His parables aren't just simple tales, they are thresholds. Now take a breath and look closer. In an age when religious authority was wielded like a weapon, Jesus speaks directly to the marginalized, in code. The parables invite those willing to listen with open hearts, while veiling their meaning from those hardened by pride or power. It's a divine paradox, clarity through concealment, revelation through riddles. What happened next changed everything. The parables began to seep into the imagination of every listener. Suddenly, a story about a mustard seed was no longer just about gardening, but about the explosive, unstoppable growth of God's kingdom from the smallest of beginnings. The parable of the Good Samaritan turned the question, "Who is my neighbor?" into a challenge that shattered ethnic and social dividing lines. These stories distilled the law, the prophets, the entire history of Israel, into seeds ready to burst forth in the hearts of a new generation of believers. This shows us something profound about spiritual wisdom. It doesn't storm the mind with force, it slips quietly into the soil of our daily lives, but there's even more beneath the surface. Every detail, a path, a fig tree, a banquet, carries echoes of ancient prophecies. Imagine the crowd realizing for the very first time that the parable of the lost sheep isn't just about livestock. It's tapping the wellspring of Ezekiel 34, where God says, "I myself will search for my sheep and look after them." Suddenly, Jesus isn't simply telling tales. He's positioning himself at the very heart of God's ancient promise. You might feel the weight of this truth pressing in. These stories are no mere moral lessons. They are living invitations into the unfolding story of God's redemption. Each parable, spoken in the dusty marketplaces of Galilee, bridges the chasm between heaven and earth, divine eternity and the aches of everyday life. But the tension remains. Many listened, but few truly understood. Some left puzzled, others set ablaze with hope. Why do some hearts ignite while others remain cold? How did Jesus' audience, shaped by centuries of tradition and suffering, recognize themselves in these parables, when the learned elites missed their significance entirely? Let's pause on this revelation. When Jesus spoke in parables, he wasn't avoiding clarity, he was offering a treasure map. X marks the spot somewhere deep inside the human soul, waiting for those who have ears to hear. As you imagine the crowds dispersing under the fading light, some pondering, some dismissing, one question lingers, unanswered and urgent. If these parables held the revolutionary blueprint for a new way of seeing God, neighbor, and self, what spiritual secret have we missed by skimming their surface? But this revelation brings us to an even deeper mystery, one that goes beyond history, straight into the spiraling heart of spiritual transformation. In the next part, we'll unearth the insight that unlocks the true power of these parables. Not simply as coded stories of a distant past, but as living currents of divine wisdom flowing into your life today. What you're about to discover may overturn everything you thought you knew about wisdom. Faith and the very meaning of Jesus' words. Are you ready to venture further into the mystery? The next revelation awaits. Imagine holding in your hand not just an ancient scroll, but a living flame, a spark waiting to ignite your spirit. That's the spiritual reality pulsing beneath Jesus' parables. They're not dusty relics, but living invitations. Why do these seemingly simple stories, wrapped in layers of mystery, keep reaching across time, stirring hearts and transforming lives? Many have believed that to understand a parable is simply to solve a riddle. But the profound truth is, the parables demand more than mental puzzle solving. Instead, they urge us to see differently, to awaken from spiritual slumber and step boldly into the reality of God's kingdom. You might be wondering, what makes these parables so spiritually powerful? The answer lies at the very heart of Jesus' message, a message that didn't just deliver information, but brought about transformation. Let's peel away the surface. The parables are designed to bypass our defenses, the walls of pride, certainty, even religiosity, and plant the seed of divine truth directly into the soil of our souls. It's a slow, almost invisible revolution. Think of the parable of the sower, seed scattered lavishly, falling on paths, on rocks, among thorns, and into good soil. The listener may at first only see a farming lesson, but beneath the soil, something far more miraculous stirs. Jesus declares, "But the seed on good soil stands for those with a noble and good heart, who hear the word, retain it, and by persevering produce a crop." Luke 8:15. Suddenly, the focus shifts from the story's details to your own heart. The parable becomes a mirror, exposing who you are and who you might become. The wisdom here is alive and dynamic, offering not just comfort but challenge, not just answers but transformation. Spiritual tradition has often painted God's kingdom as distant, unreachable. Yet Jesus says, "The kingdom of God is within you." Luke 17:21. The parables are the gentle yet relentless knocking of that kingdom on the door of your life. In the parable of the mustard seed, what looks like insignificance becomes unstoppable. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree. Matthew 13:32. Imagine feeling the shock of this for the first time. Your ordinary life is the very soil where the extraordinary takes root. But that's only the beginning. The parables masterfully overturn expectations. Take the parable of the prodigal son. Many would expect judgment for the wayward son, but the father runs to embrace him. In that unfolding embrace, Jesus reveals not only the depth of God's mercy, but a mystery that undoes our natural inclinations. The ledger of sin is wiped away by the flood of divine love. It's a spiritual plot twist so radical, so destabilizing, it turns proud hearts cold and broken hearts ablaze with hope. The tension sharpens. Each parable exposes a paradox: strength in weakness, greatness in humility, abundance in surrender. The religious elite thought God's favor was earned through rule-keeping and outward perfection. But the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector strikes like a lightning bolt. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Luke 18:14. Imagine standing in that temple, realizing God's gaze rests not on outward achievement, but on the trembling confession of an outcast. This is a spiritual surprise. It's not the good who are closest to God, but the honest and humble. What makes these parables uniquely spiritual is that they're not static. They're living stories waiting for you to enter in. As you listen, a strange thing happens. You become the sower, the prodigal, the lost sheep, the good Samaritan. The boundary between story and soul blurs. With Jesus' words, you walk the landscapes of mercy, forgiveness, and faith, and you begin to see yourself as God sees you. You might be asking, but what about the stories that end unresolved, the unanswered questions? That's intentional. Jesus rarely provides neat conclusions. Instead, his parables withhold closure, keeping the heart and mind wrestling, awake, searching, yearning. This tension is the birthplace of faith, where you move from certainty to trust, from knowledge to mystery. Let's pause on this mini-revelation. These stories aren't answers to questions. They are questions that search for your deepest answers. The parable of the talents. Will you risk or hide? The parable of the unforgiving servant. Can you forgive as you were forgiven? The parable of the yeast. Are you willing to let transformation work in hidden ways? Each parable keeps returning to you again and again, like a wave reshaping the shore of your heart. But why did Jesus employ this method? Here's where the theological perspective widens. Jesus, the Word made flesh, embodies the very wisdom he conveys. John's Gospel declares, "In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind." John 1:4. The parables are therefore not just teachings, they are glimpses into the mind and heart of the living God. Their power isn't in their cleverness, but in their connection to Jesus himself, the living Word who speaks and awakens. And every time a parable is told, something sacred unfolds. Whether it's a banquet for the undeserving or the tenacious widow who won't give up on justice, the listener is invited into God's vision for the world, a vision that always subverts and surpasses our own. Grace is scandalous, mercy is overflowing, forgiveness is dangerous and freeing. The spiritually hungry find themselves fed, while the proud leave perplexed. Jesus, through parables, sifts hearts, revealing who is truly open to the kingdom's call. This shows us something profound about spiritual insight. True wisdom isn't something we master, it is someone who masters us. In every parable, Jesus isn't handing us simple morals, he is ushering us closer into divine encounter. It's as if he whispers, "There is more, if only you seek, if only you listen, if only you let go." Now imagine feeling the weight of this reality in your own soul. You find yourself not just a listener, but a participant in the greatest story ever told. The parables challenge you to risk, to surrender, to hope in the face of despair. They call forth a faith that is lived, not just learned. He who has ears, let him hear. Matthew 13:9. This isn't just a call to hearing, it's a summons to transformation. And yet, a final mystery lingers. What would happen if we dared to take these parables seriously, not as relics, but as blueprints for our lives right now? Could the wisdom that upended religious systems and opened the gates of heaven actually speak into our daily chaos, our loneliness, our searching? What if, locked within the ancient parables, are spiritual currents ready to awaken the world in our own generation? But before we rush ahead, one vital question remains. How can these transformative truths step out of the realm of theory and theology and set fire to the reality of our everyday lives? The next part will reveal how Jesus' timeless parables don't just dwell in the past. They leap into the modern world, challenging, healing, and reshaping everything about the way we live. What you're about to discover in the following segment will change how you see your neighbors, your struggles, your opportunities, perhaps even your purpose itself. Are you ready to step through the door these parables are opening? The revelation is only beginning. Keep watching. Pause for a moment and picture yourself in a bustling cafe, modern-day life surrounding you in a whirl of smartphones, news feeds, deadlines, and the low hum of hurried conversations. Now, imagine Jesus walking in, eyes full of the same mystery and kindness that once captivated ancient crowds. Instead of a field, it's your city street. Instead of a fig tree, it's the corner office or crowded subway. Suddenly, those parables you thought belonged to another era start vibrating with relevance, alive, potent, demanding your attention. Many believe that ancient wisdom is reserved for the sacred halls of history, but the profound truth is this: Jesus' parables are seeds engineered for every age, including our hyper-connected, restless now. What does a story about a Samaritan have to do with a morning commute? What can the lost coin tell someone wrestling with loneliness in the glow of their phone screen? Let's step into this unfolding mystery, a bridge between then and now, where wisdom leaps across millennia to land, urgently at your feet. You might be wondering, how can these stories possibly speak to my daily reality, crowded with noise that drowns out even my best intentions? The answer comes in waves, sometimes soft and silent, other times electrifying. Let's start with the parable of the Good Samaritan. In Jesus' day, that story was scandalous. A hated outsider becomes the hero, crossing social boundaries to offer mercy where others passed by. Fast forward to today, how often do we, insulated by headphones and scrolling screens, cross the street of suffering, choosing convenience over compassion? Imagine, just for a moment, pausing your rush to notice the colleague everyone overlooks, the stranger crying in public, the friend whose silent texts speak volumes. Suddenly the parable isn't just about someone else out there, it's about you, right here and now. Real-world examples surface if we dare to open our eyes. Take the story of a city bus driver who, seeing a shivering homeless man at dawn, reaches into her own pocket to buy him breakfast, her only meal money spared out of love. Or the neighbor who, instead of ignoring the angry outburst across the apartment hall, returns the next day with homemade bread and a note of kindness. These are modern Good Samaritans, hidden saints in plain sight, letting compassion disrupt routine. But what about the parable of the lost sheep? We live in a culture obsessed with the majority, with numbers, with likes and followers, chasing crowds while the one in pain slips away unseen. Yet, what if you stopped, just for a heartbeat, to seek out the forgotten? A teacher who notices the withdrawn child at recess, a manager who listens to the quietest voice in the meeting, a friend who checks in long after the crisis has passed. Here, the shepherd's heart lives again. Jesus' parable challenges us to drop our calculations and pursue the inestimable worth of the one who is lost, overlooked, or misunderstood. This shows us something profound about daily faith in action. The parables are not abstract principles. They are calls to risky, inconvenient love. They urge us to live with open hands and watchful eyes, awake to the sacred in the ordinary. Yet there's more. Think of the parable of the talents. A master entrusts his servants with resources, expecting them to invest and multiply, not hide them in fear. What about you? In this bustling, competitive world, what are you doing with your talents, your time, your creativity, your influence? Many of us bury our gifts beneath anxiety, busyness, or doubt. But the parable insists, risk, step out, bless the world with the treasure inside you. Even if you're afraid, consider the young entrepreneur who, overwhelmed by market failures, reinvents her business model to serve the vulnerable, turning profit into purpose. Consider the retired engineer who volunteers at a shelter, building hope out of leftover materials and leftover time. Even a single smile, a note of encouragement, a humble offer to help can multiply beyond your imagining. The parable is not about financial return, it's about the boldness to trust that what you offer matters in the economy of God. But perhaps you find yourself relating to the parable of the prodigal son, worn out by regret, longing for a homecoming, but afraid you'll be met with shame. The surprise woven into Jesus' words rushes into the present. God's forgiveness is not stuck in the past. It is new every morning. Today, prodigals find their way home in recovery meetings, forgiveness letters, and broken families willing to love again. One young man, estranged from his father, for years sends a single text, "I'm sorry, can we talk?" In a moment, the embrace of restoration floods his life. The parables are not distant fairy tales. They are blueprints for healing fractured relationships, for finding welcome where we least expect it. And what of the parable of the mustard seed? In a world racing for instant results and viral fame, the parable gently subverts our impatience. Small, hidden, humble beginnings can change everything. The community garden started on a neglected lot, eventually feeding an entire neighborhood. The after-school reading circle that sparks lifelong curiosity. The single act of standing up for the bullied student, seemingly invisible, yet world-changing. In its ripple, imagine feeling the hope of this tiny seed, your small, faithful acts pulsing with cosmic significance. But the tension builds. Because living out the parables is never neat or predictable. Sometimes compassion is misunderstood, talents fail to bear fruit, forgiveness is rejected, or mustard seeds are trampled before they sprout. The parables invite us to perseverance, to keep sowing, loving, embracing, even when we see no instant return. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Galatians 6:9, feel that rhythm, hope-propelling action, faith infused into the details of daily grind. Yet there's a secret strength in this journey. As you receive the stories and step into them, you change, and so does the world around you. Like yeast working through dough, the kingdom of God rises slowly, invisibly, until everything is transformed. That's why these parables refuse to remain on ancient scrolls or stained glass windows. They are restless, breaking out in the graffiti of city walls, whispered in support groups, lived in kitchens, boardrooms and playgrounds everywhere. You might be asking, but what if I fail? What if I'm nobody special? The answer is as unsettling as it is beautiful. Every story begins with smallness. No one is too ordinary for extraordinary grace. Remember Jesus' promise, the last will be first, and the first will be last. Matthew 20:16. In God's economy, humble faith is always the surprise ending. Let's gather up this insight. Modern life, its technology, anxieties, and opportunities, is not a barrier to encountering the wisdom of Jesus' parables. It's the very arena in which that wisdom is proven true over and over. Whenever you choose compassion over comfort, risk over safety, or grace over conflict, you embody the living parable of Christ in the world. But amidst these bold applications, one question sharpens like a blade. If the parables really carry such transformative power, what are the larger forces at work, spiritually and prophetically, when people live them radically today? Could these ancient mysteries be unlocking the hinges of history, preparing us for something even greater? Get ready, for in the next part we will journey beyond the visible in pursuit of prophetic implications and the possibility that the parables of Jesus are not only shaping lives, but shaping futures, destinies, and even the trajectory of the world itself. What you will discover next might just redefine the horizon of your hope. Will you take the next step? The ultimate unveiling awaits. Imagine this. Night falls on the modern world, city lights twinkling like stars, each window a universe of longing, restlessness, hope, and hidden pain. The parables of Jesus, ancient and persistent, move through this world like whispering winds. And as the old stories are retold, lived and wrestled with in the chaos of now, prophecy stirs beneath the ordinary. An invitation to see not just the present, but the unfolding future woven into every word. Many believe that parables are simply echoes of advice or gentle lessons of the past. But the profound truth is this: each parable pulses with prophetic power, vibrating on a frequency both ancient and utterly new. Inside their mysteries lies a roadmap, not just for individual souls, but for the destiny of entire communities, generations, and even the world. Let's peel back the veil. You might be wondering, can short stories really shape the trajectory of history? Could the parables be more than moral guidance? Could they be spiritual blueprints for what is still to come? The answer is both startling and spectacular. Start with the parable of the 10 virgins. At first glance, it's a story about lamps, oil, and watching for a coming bridegroom. But its echoes reach far beyond a single night's wedding vigil. Jesus is painting a prophetic picture of readiness. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know the day or the hour. Matthew 25:13. Imagine the tension of that truth. These words are pressing in on us, here and now, as the world trembles with change. And the horizon of history seems to darken and brighten by turns. Across time, whenever humanity has stood on the brink, revolutions, wars, awakenings, it's often the oil in hidden lamps, the steady faith and preparedness in quiet hearts that has lit the way through the darkness. The parable is an urgent prophecy. Wake up, stay ready, don't let your light be extinguished, for a great dawn is coming. What would it mean for our generation to live as people watching and preparing for something beautiful and unknown, a world finally made right? But there's more. The parable of the wheat and the weeds reveals a cosmic tension, good and evil, side by side, present in the same fields, families, communities. You might think justice demands immediate uprooting of the weeds, but Jesus stuns us with the divine patience of God's plan. Let both grow together until the harvest. Matthew 13:30. History is not aimless chaos. The parable insists that every moment of waiting, every struggle with pain and injustice is leading to an appointed time. Prophetic timing pulses beneath the surface. God's vision for ultimate restoration outpaces our demand for instant answers. Consider also the parable of the mustard seed, already seen as a lesson in small beginnings, but prophetically it is a vision of unstoppable expansion. From an unnoticed seed rises a future so vast, even the birds of the air come and perch in its branches. Matthew 13:32. Look at history, movements for justice, compassion, reconciliation, each sparked by a single act of faith that seemed insignificant at first. From underground churches in oppressive regimes to reconciliation efforts in once divided lands, mustard seeds pierce the concrete of despair, announcing that what seems impossible will one day fill the world. The pace quickens as you realize. Every parable, in its mysterious simplicity, nests a future event hidden like a pearl in its shell. What about the parable of the fig tree? As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Matthew 24:32. Here, Jesus connects the reading of the world's changing seasons with spiritual discernment, urging his followers not to numb themselves to the world's groaning, but to recognize the signs of the times. Imagine feeling the tension of these days. Technology racing ahead, cultures colliding, nature itself in upheaval. Could these signs be summoning us more than ever to the vigilance and hope Jesus described? Those who heed this prophetic rhythm learn to watch the world differently, not with fear, but with expectation. And now, the parable of the banquet. It rings not just with open invitation, but a prophetic vision of the end of all things, a time when the marginalized, forgotten, and dismissed will fill the seats of honor at God's great feast. This future hope is not escapism, it's a call to act now, to extend the same radical welcome to those the world rejects. Each time a meal is shared with the hungry, or a friendship crosses boundaries of race, wealth, or religion, a fragment of the coming banquet bursts into today. This shows us something profound about the prophetic power of the parables. They do not flatten the future into fatalism, but instead flood it with possibility. They fire our imaginations to hope, to labor, and to persevere for a greater good that is more certain than the morning light. Yet amidst vision and hope, there is also holy warning. Jesus' parables urge us not to assume that justice or healing will come automatically. The path is narrow. Participation is everything. The parable of the talents is not just about maximizing potential. It is a warning not to let fear or comfort make us bury our calling. Prophetic history is written by those brave enough to risk the life and gifts God gives. You might be feeling your heart thrum with anticipation and possibly a shade of concern. If the parables are this powerful, am I living in tune or asleep at the threshold? These prophetic stories refuse to leave us unchanged or unchallenged. The tension rises because the parables suggest that the destiny of the world is not set by kings or trends, but by quiet, daily acts of love, courage, humility, and hope, multiplied by countless ordinary people. One hidden prayer, one unrecorded act of mercy, one moment of forgiveness, they bend the future, shift the tide, and prepare the earth for the kingdom that is coming. Picture the future shaped by the Good Samaritan, a world where enemies become neighbors, where every border crossed by compassion tears down walls built by hate. Or the world of the lost sheep, where the search never stops until every soul, every last one, is found and embraced. These are not just dreams, they are the prophetic blueprints Jesus handed to his followers with every story he told. But this raises an even deeper question, a question that cuts to the core of every seeking heart. If this is the future the parables prophesy, how do we become people shaped, fueled, and propelled by that future? What does it mean to live in the present as citizens of the coming kingdom, with eyes that see what others only glimpse in faith? Before we leave the threshold of these mysteries, pause and let this settle in. The parables are not finished. Their prophecy is still unfolding, and you are being written into it. Every choice, every act of hope, every refusal to give in to cynicism. Yet one gripping mystery remains. How do we take these prophetic dreams and let them transform our deepest inner life and daily experience so the future pulses in our present heartbeat? What you are about to discover in the next part will draw you even closer to the living core of the parables, where prophetic hope becomes a personal encounter and timeless wisdom births a deep, daily connection between your spirit and God's. The greatest unveiling is yet to come. Will you follow the story deeper into the very heart of the mystery? Imagine late evening silence. Perhaps you're alone, or sitting quietly with soft lamplight flickering across the walls. It's in these moments the world's clamor fades, and something within you yearns for depth, for meaning, for God Himself to speak. What if Jesus' parables were not just messages to talk about, but living doors for you to walk through, portals to a deeper, more intimate spiritual connection than you might have ever experienced? Many believe the parables are simply stories to remember, moral lessons for children, or theological debates for the learned. But the profound truth is this: behind every phrase in these parables, a river of living water flows, waiting to pick you up, carry you into encounter, awaken your true self, and draw you into communion with the divine. You might be wondering, how can a story deepen my connection to God? Aren't words just words? But that question is where the hidden mystery lives. Each parable, when entered not just with mind but with spirit, becomes a sacred encounter, a whispered invitation to know not about God, but to know Him personally, heart to heart. Let's step into this mystery together. Picture the parable of the lost sheep, not from above but from within. Close your eyes. Can you feel it? The ache of being lost, the faint hope that someone might come searching. The shepherd's footsteps, soft but purposeful, crunching on rocky ground. His voice calling your name into the wilderness through fear and regret, loneliness and doubt. Suddenly, you're not an observer. You're the beloved foundling, lifted up and carried home on strong shoulders. In that moment, something shifts. This is not abstract forgiveness. It is the pulse of God's pursuing love, meeting you in your need, your story, your silence. You are found. Now slide into the shoes of the prodigal son, walking the long road of return with shame heavy on your back. Imagine the nerves, the rehearsed apology, the uncertainty of homecoming. And then, unexpected, scandalous, the father runs. Robe, ring, celebration. The entire atmosphere trembles with welcome you never dared hope for. This is grace experienced, a soul-to-soul embrace that tells you, even in your failure, you are utterly cherished by God. Not just forgiven, but restored. Stories like these break down our distance, not just teaching us about love or mercy or hope, but allowing us to breathe it, taste it, become enfolded in it. The parables are spiritual bridges, from mere religious activity to a living, breathing relationship. Every word is a doorway into prayer, every metaphor a window opening directly onto the face of Christ. But there's more. The parables were designed to provoke interaction, an ongoing, two-way conversation. Consider the parable of the sower. Each soil type is not a mere personality test. It is an ongoing spiritual reflection. The rocky places, the thorns, the worn paths, they are all inside you right now. The story invites you into a dialogue. Lord, where is my heart hard? Where have I let distractions choke your word? Where is your spirit breaking? up new ground in my soul. As you ask, as you listen, the story becomes alive, a living garden God himself tends. The parable of the pearl of great price is perhaps the most quietly radical. Can you feel its force? A merchant sells all, future, security, standing, for a single treasure. Jesus is that priceless pearl, and the parable whispers, your greatest fulfillment comes not from clinging to what you've earned or planned, but by risking everything in pursuit of direct encounter with him. Suddenly, faith is not duty, but desire, not burden, but liberation. You might be thinking, but I've tried to pray, to connect, and it sometimes feels dry or empty. Even here, the parables are a guide, showing you that the road of the kingdom is full of hiddenness, waiting, even apparent silence. The parable of the yeast tells you, the Spirit often works invisibly, needing God's presence through every part of your life, slowly, silently, until all is changed. In seasons when you don't see fruit, trust that the spiritual ferment is still at work within you. Let's draw out a deep revelation here. The secret of deepening spiritual connection is not in striving harder, but in surrendering more completely, allowing yourself to be woven into the very story Jesus tells. The parables are more than lessons, they are invitations. Abide in me, and I in you. John 15:4. Each story is a branch you cling to, a vine pulsing with life, drawing you into the heartbeat of God. Imagine a community that enters the parables together, not just studying, but sharing, confessing, weeping, rejoicing. Picture the parable of the banquet enacted, not on silver platters, but over pizza boxes or soup kitchens, among people with nothing in common but hunger for love. Every shared meal, every honest conversation, every prayer for one another is a living parable, a place where the line between story and spirit disappears. You might ask, can this really heal my wounds? Can it give my distracted life focus? Can it fill my emptiness or conquer my anxieties? Hear the whisper, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. The parables did not stop speaking in Galilee. They are alive, speaking now, threading God's truth into your confusion, heartbreak, joy, and longing. They are the Spirit's language, uniquely fitted to every season of your soul. Let's pause for a moment of sacred clarity. To deepen spiritual connection is not to escape the world, but to find God singing in its depths, through lostness and homecoming, hope and hunger, risk and return. In each parable, the border between the sacred and the everyday becomes achingly thin. Yet one great tension remains, a holy reverberation in the heart. If Jesus' stories are truly living and active, how do we become people who let these daily encounters change us, shape us, transform our way of being in the world? What practical path leads from this inner fire to an outer life, radiant and free, that others cannot help but notice? What you're about to discover in the next part may shock you in its simplicity, yet challenge you profoundly. The very steps that turn deep spiritual connection into a revolutionized way of living. Don't look away now. The transformation you hunger for is just one revelation away. Are you ready to walk this path? The journey is about to become your own. Imagine standing at the edge of a quiet lake just before dawn. The water is so still, every ripple becomes a mirror for the sky. This is the moment when the parables reach their hands toward you, not simply as echoes from long ago, but as living invitations. Come further, come deeper. If your spirit longs not just to hear Jesus' words, but to live them, the question presses in. How do we embody these stories? How do we let their ancient wisdom spark daily, practical spiritual growth? Many believe spiritual growth is reserved for monks or mystics, attained only through soaring visions or endless discipline. But the profound truth is this: the parables are meant for the ordinary. They are blueprints for daily life, waiting to be practiced step by intentional step. No ivory towers, no secret handshakes, just you, right where you are, invited to nurture spiritual roots that gradually transform everything. You might be wondering, where do I even begin? The answer, as always, is hidden in plain sight, woven through the storytelling genius of Jesus. Let's step, one parable at a time, into the practical rhythms of the kingdom. You might be thinking, but what if I fail? What if nothing seems to happen at first? Yet that is the beauty. Every parable honors persistence. Seeds take root underground before they break the surface. The yeast works invisibly in the dough. The shepherd doesn't give up after one hill, nor does the prodigal father stop watching the road. Real spiritual growth is not dramatic transformation overnight. It is steady, relentless, faithful. Becoming day by day, grace upon grace. Let's pause for this mini epiphany. The parables don't just invite us to do more, they invite us to become more. More like Jesus, more attentive, more surrendered, more awake to the sacred woven through absolutely everything. But there's one more layer, a mystery coiling like golden thread through every practical step. As you begin to live these parables, you are creating space for divine encounter, not only transforming your actions, but allowing the Spirit of God to inhabit your ordinary life. Each choice to forgive, to risk, to serve, to pray is an echo of Jesus' own life entering yours. Spiritual growth becomes not a grind, but a partnership with God's grace, filling your emptiness, shaping you from within. You might sense it rising in you now, a hunger, an ache, perhaps a tremor of holy longing for more. The practical path is here, but the power comes from walking it with others, with witnesses, with fellow pilgrims who hold you up when you stumble and ignite your fire when it dims. And that brings us to a revelation too powerful to carry alone. Genuine spiritual maturity takes root and flourishes in community, in the humble sharing of parable-shaped lives with others who are searching and becoming right alongside you. But what happens when many hearts and lives, all transformed by Jesus' wisdom, begin to find each other? What is released in the world when communities are built not on appearance or power, but on the living stories of grace and risk, return and welcome? In our next part, we step boldly into the living center of faith, a place where isolated sparks ignite into wildfire, where the parables become the shared language of a new kind of community. What you're about to witness may forever widen your vision for what church, friendship, and shared purpose can become. Will you take one step further and experience the power of faith lived together? Keep watching, because the transformation is only just beginning. Imagine a bonfire kindled on a dark hillside, a single flicker at first, then a radiance gathering strength, drawing strangers from the shadows until they stand together, faces aglow in a shared warmth. This is community as Jesus envisioned it, rooted not in sameness or duty, but in stories that cut through division and isolation, joining hearts in an unexpected holy fellowship. Many believe that faith is a private affair, something to be guarded quietly, almost hidden for fear of misunderstanding. But the profound truth is this: the parables were spoken in the presence of crowds, families, outcasts, and enemies, precisely because transformation is meant to overflow the boundaries of an individual heart. When the wisdom of Jesus' stories becomes shared language, when it's lived out together, something miraculous starts to take place. You might be wondering, what does a parable-shaped community look like in the real world? How can stories told in Galilean fields become the lifeblood of our neighborhoods, workplaces, and families today? Let's step into this mystery, where the abstract becomes tangible and the teachings of Christ become the architecture of collective hope. Start by picturing the parable of the banquet. In ancient times, Jesus depicted God's kingdom as a feast, a table overflowing with welcome, laughter, and surprising guests. That vision shatters every human tendency to cling only to the comfortable, the familiar. In today's fragmented world, a parable-infused community rises when we build longer tables instead of higher fences, when church is not just a service, but a shared meal with space for the overlooked, the hurting, and the different. Consider the story of a small faith group that met each week over simple soup and bread. At first, they were strangers, teachers, recovering addicts, recent immigrants, single parents, retirees. But as they listened to the parables and risked honesty, sharing doubts, confessions, dreams, the barriers melted. Grudges faded around shared laughter. Loneliness was replaced by purpose. In this small circle, the banquet became more than myth. The presence of Christ was almost palpable, woven through every smile and silent tear. This is the power of the parable lived out, the kingdom of God breaking in, disguised as ordinary community. Think of the parable of the lost sheep. In a true, living community shaped by Jesus' wisdom, no one is invisible. When one person vanishes because of shame, crisis, or grief, others refuse to let them go. Leaders, friends, even children learn to notice absence and gently pursue it. There's a rhythm of phone calls, meals delivered, shared burdens. Like the shepherd on a dark hill, a community that loves like this refuses to settle for 99%, burning with God's longing for the restoration of every single heart. But it's not just rescue and welcome. Within a parable-shaped community, transformation is forged in honest struggle. The parable of the unforgiving servant becomes real when conflict and misunderstanding threaten to divide. Here, forgiveness is no longer theoretical. It is the fierce, practical glue holding souls together. Reconciliation circles, shared lament, brave apologies. Each act echoes the mercy of God, and over time, history's wounds yield to resurrection. Let's draw this further. Communities practicing these parables become laboratories for grace. The parable of the talents is enacted when gifts long ignored are uncovered and celebrated. A once quiet member discovers her voice reading scripture. A shy student brings music that lifts the room. A retiree's skills in carpentry create a new ministry. Success is not measured by numbers or performance, but by how widely and deeply each person risks giving what they have. You might be inwardly asking, can ordinary groups of people really embody such radical love, or are these stories just idealistic poetry? Yet examples are everywhere. House churches opening living rooms to the homeless, families choosing foster care and rewriting what belonging means, youth groups spending summers in service instead of distraction. Even online spaces spring to life when believers use parable patterns, listening more than speaking, upholding dignity, staying with the struggling. Pause and savor this mini-revelation. There is unparalleled power released when faith is shared. As Jesus promised, where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there am I with them. Matthew 18:20. The presence of Christ inhabits not just sanctuaries or cathedrals, but circles on floors, parks, break rooms, and virtual calls, wherever his stories are treasured and enacted together. But community is not always easy. The parable of the weeds and the wheat reminds us that imperfection and messiness are inevitable, even in spiritual family. Real community is not utopia. Differences, struggles, even failures become soil for miracles. The test of a parable-shaped people is not cleanliness, but clinging to one another, to forgiveness, to hope, until, at last, the persistent love of God has its way. Within this holy tension, deeper questions bloom. How do we sustain such communities beyond initial enthusiasm? How is friendship kept alive when trials come, when faith flickers, when cynicism seeps in? The secret, again, is cyclical return. Like the prodigal's father or the persistent widow, parable-shaped communities practice patient pursuit and regular recommitment. They retell the stories, at meals, in crises, in celebrations, so the wisdom is not lost, but becomes the shared heartbeat of their journey. Imagine feeling for the first time what it's like to be part of a family where failure is not fatal, struggle is expected, and every return is met with joy. Imagine stumbling, doubting, yet being called by name, welcomed, restored, set again at the table. This is the kingdom alive and now, not someday far off. You might find yourself longing for this kind of belonging. Or maybe you see glimpses in your faith group, your friendships, your efforts to reach out. Know this: each time you risk vulnerability, invite the stranger, forgive the hurt, or serve with no applause, you embody the parable at the heart of God's dream for the world. Yet the parables press us still further. What if every soul awakened to this calling unleashed another and another, until movements of hope and mercy flow like rivers through cities, classrooms, and families? What would the world look like if the stories of Jesus became the DNA of every community, the dream lived until it's no longer just a parable, but the new reality of creation itself? But this stirs one final piercing question, one more revelation you cannot turn away from. How does the parable journey change you personally in the places no one else sees? How do the shared experiences and communal stories become the catalyst for your most intimate transformation and the testimony your life will leave for others? In the final part, we descend into the sacred territory of the heart, where personal reflection meets the power of real-life stories, and where you are invited to find your own narrative in the ongoing adventure of faith. The most remarkable discovery awaits you. Step closer, because your story is about to join the great unfolding. Now pause. Let the noise of the world slip to the background. Flatten your distractions, soften your gaze, and listen to the hush within. It's here, in the inner sanctuary of your soul, that the parables of Jesus finally yield their deepest medicine. What if these stories, ancient and mysterious, have always been quietly rewriting your own narrative? An invisible hand tracing hope through the moments you've forgotten, the sorrows you've carried, and the dreams you dare not name? Many believe our lives are shaped by the relentless tide of circumstances, accidents, or the weight of the past. But the profound truth is this: Jesus' parables are not just commentaries on the world. They are living seeds defiant against despair, waiting to break open transformation in anyone humble enough to let them in. Your story, yes, yours, is ready to be rewritten by the living wisdom of Christ. You might be wondering, can a story really change the trajectory of my heart? Can the whispers of a wandering Galilean actually untangle my regrets, heal my anger, awaken purpose where nothing but routine remained? Allow a moment for the possibility to flicker, because this is where the parables become not analysis, but encounter, not memory, but living reality. Let's journey together into the territory where stories and souls collide. Imagine the parable of the lost coin. Picture a woman frantically searching every corner of her home, sweeping away dust, lighting lamps, refusing to stop until what's precious is held in her hands. Now step into your own longing. Think of a part of yourself once lost. Your hope, your voice, perhaps your innocence or sense of belonging. The parable does not scold you for losing it. It invites you into the search. Remember that feeling, aching for something you can barely name. And in the telling, you discover you're not alone, never abandoned. The relentless tenderness of God is at work, sweeping the corners of your heart until you find yourself found. But transformation rarely announces itself in trumpet blasts. More often, it creeps in quietly, like yeast kneaded into dough. Consider the story of Jonathan, a man who lost himself in the haze of addiction. Years were wasted, relationships burned away by shame. One evening in a recovery group, someone repeated the parable of the prodigal son. In that echo, something crumbled. For perhaps the first time, Jonathan dared to believe the father was running down the path for him, even as he reeked of failure. One simple prayer, half doubt, half surrender, became a turning, a thread pulling him home. Years later, Jonathan mentors others with the same story, his scars transformed into the bread he shares. The parable didn't just comfort, it cracked open a resurrection. Maybe your journey is quieter, the fatigue of caregiving, the ache of unfulfilled dreams, or the persistent shadow of anxiety. Enter the parable of the mustard seed. Sarah, a young mother, nearly drowned in postpartum depression, wrestling with darkness behind a practiced smile. One day, she heard a child recite, "The smallest seed will become the largest tree." Something clicked, a defiant, trembling hope that her smallest prayers, her simple acts of getting out of bed might one day grow roots and branches. She started leaving anonymous notes of encouragement for other mothers, creating a secret network of hope. The parable bred courage that multiplied, renewed, unseen, until healing emerged like sap rising in spring. Transformation is not reserved for moments of drama. It unfolds in daily decisions. Take the parable of the Good Samaritan. Think of Elena, a busy executive, who kept passing by the pain around her. After reading the parable during a quiet morning commute, she made a vow: one inconvenience every day for someone else's sake. A sandwich for a homeless neighbor turned to an advocacy project at work. Soon, her team became a community bubbling over, with trust and shared purpose. From a single story came a chain reaction, her faith shifting from belief to embodied compassion. But no story is only about triumph. Sometimes, entering the parables means allowing God to rewrite your pain. Consider the father whose daughter ran away, lost in a storm of rebellion. Every night he reread the parable of the persistent widow. Will not God bring about justice for his chosen ones who cry out to him day and night? Luke 18:7. He didn't give up. Years of prayer, notes sent into silence, invitations unreturned, until one grey morning, a knock on the door. She had come home, still hurting, but the line between pain and hope had blurred. They found their forgiveness in the spaces the parable had carved out in their hearts. Let's let this land. These stories do not merely inform, they conform us to the image of Christ from the inside out. Over time, the paradoxes of the parables, losing to gain, humbling to be exalted, surrendering to receive, become the deep logic that shapes your days. You realize the stories aren't distant, they are mapping your very soul, prodding you to ask, where am I the sower? Where the soil in need of tilling? Where the beloved in need of return? You might feel the rise of holy discomfort. Can I truly let these stories change me, or will I slip quietly back into the numbness of routine? The invitation is unyielding. Dare to let the parables become mirrors for your choices, fuel for your prayers, songs for your pilgrimage. When you stumble, remember that failure is the threshold for grace. When you succeed, let humility sing its secret. When you are unsure, rest in the wisdom that has carried saints across centuries. Now picture this. As you wrestle with these ancient words, you are never alone. All over the world, men and women, old and young, are living out their own chapters, testimonies quietly scribed in kitchens, hospital wards, city buses, and desert retreats. Every person found, every forgiveness offered, every hidden act of faith, these are the parables being written still. But there's one more threshold, a question blazing bright. If your life is a new page in the story of Jesus, what parable does he want to write through you now? What seed must be sown today? Whose pain can you bandage in hiddenness? What risk is the Spirit urging you to take, that your mustard seed might bloom into shelter for many? The story is unfinished. The next lines belong to you, your heart's ache, your secret hopes, your willingness to step forward when the ending is still unknown. Will you let these parables transform everything right now, beginning with your next breath? Do not turn away, for what you are about to live could become the greatest story yet, one that echoes long after you, like the carpenter's voice that still calls out, "Follow me," through the ages. The invitation is open, the wisdom waits, and your journey with Jesus' parables has only just begun. Now, as we stand at the end of this journey through Jesus' parables, pause for a moment and look back. See the path that has brought you here, winding through ancient hillsides and bustling marketplaces, across the thresholds of your own heart, right into the pulse of the world as it is today. We began with a lingering question. Why do these stories, born from the lips of a carpenter 2,000 years ago, still stir hearts, still unnerve, comfort, and awaken us in ways nothing else can? Many live seeing parables as mere artifacts, charming fables with a moral tucked inside, lessons to admire but seldom apply. But you're invited to see so much more. You've uncovered the pattern. Each parable is a doorway, an offer, a living map of God's dream for each soul and every community. Now we can clearly see that these stories are not just storerooms of wisdom, but seeds designed to bring forth new life in every era, every culture, and any human willing to open up and listen. When we bring all these truths together, the mosaic forms. Parables are not instructions from afar, but invitations up close, each one a brushstroke painting the character of a God who searches, welcomes, forgives, and calls the unseen by name. They form a divine tapestry, threads of warning, hope, challenge, and impossible mercy, woven through the fabric of daily life. Imagine finally seeing the entire tapestry unfold, not one lost sheep, but a flock restored, not a single seed, but a world-spanning tree offering shelter and rest to all who come. Let your heart rise in this recognition. No matter your past missteps or the ordinariness of your days, the kingdom Jesus describes is ever breaking in, where there is hunger for redemption, where a single act of mercy is risked, where a secret prayer is whispered in faith. The stories of Jesus meet you in your struggle, in your longing, in your hope that life can be more than surviving. The parables teach us that spiritual transformation is not reserved for saints or sages, but is swirling all around and within us, waiting for a surrendered yes. Now let this final revelation ignite in your spirit. You were created not just to hear these stories, but to live them, to become yourself, the parable unfolding in the world right now. When you step into these mysteries, embracing the lost, forgiving the wayward, sowing small seeds of kindness, risking your talents, persisting in prayer, the kingdom multiplies within and around you. You become a living echo of Jesus' wisdom, your life a chapter. In the story God is still writing for the world. Let me share with you a story about a woman named Ruth, a public school teacher who felt ordinary and unseen. She clung to the parable of the mustard seed. Each day she greeted the kids who struggled, offered smiles to those who felt invisible, carried extra food for children who arrived hungry. No one called her a hero. Few even noticed. But over time, the classroom became a place of belonging and peace. Years later, one of her students, a once resentful boy on the edge of giving up, wrote her a letter. "You saw me when no one else did. You gave me hope." For Ruth, the parable had moved from theory to reality. Her smallest acts, so easy to ignore, had become shelter for another soul. That, friend, is what you are capable of. Ordinary days transformed by extraordinary love. The limit is not your ability, but your willingness to be the good soil, the faithful servant, the returning son or daughter who says, "Here I am, Lord. Let your story be lived in me." So how do you begin? Imagine how your life would change if you reached today for one parable and let it shape your next decision. Start simple. Take 5 minutes each morning to sit with a parable. Read it slowly, ponder it, pray for open ears. Choose one action of mercy or risk inspired by the story and carry it through your day, no matter how small. Share with a friend or family member how the words of Jesus met you in your struggle. Invite them to walk the journey with you. At the end of each week, reflect, where did you see the kingdom breaking in? Where were you, the sower, the soil, the sheep on someone's shoulders? When you begin to live this way, the ordinary is flooded with possibility. Peace, purpose, and the presence of God bloom in places once barren. And as you walk this journey, remember, you are not alone. All over the earth, others are waking up, daring to step through these ancient doors and discovering that hope, hunger, and holy surprise are the common language of every follower of Christ. Let's become that living community. Would you share in the comments a moment when a parable of Jesus spoke directly to your story? How did it change your perspective or nudge you toward a new act of mercy? Your words may be the sacred spark someone else needs to begin again. If this exploration stirred your soul, consider sharing it with someone longing for deeper meaning, because spiritual wisdom multiplies when it's given away. And if today you sense the quiet nudge to press further, know this: in the coming weeks we'll dive even deeper, exploring how the overlooked details, the hidden in plain sight truths, may unlock fresh freedom and faith for your journey. Make sure to join us. What awaits will surprise you. As we close, let these words settle over your heart, an unbreakable promise echoing through every parable, every age, every longing life. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Matthew 11:15. Pause. Let the silence linger. Let the invitation echo. You have heard, now go and let the story live on in you.